Man-made global warming is a hoax.
Hi there. This is Christian Shorey with the Earth and Environmental Systems podcast. Because I talk about climate change, someone told me I should watch this video. I thought that this would be the best way to respond. So I want to simply ask the question, who would you trust more? Rush Limbaugh or a glacier? Or to broaden the scope, glaciers and sea ice. Well, let's hear from Rush first.
I got a note today from our official climatologist, Dr. Roy Spencer. He sent me something from his blog.
This is Dr. Roy Spencer. I have a file of scientists who have a history of making comments on climate change that demonstrate either lack of knowledge or lack of honesty. And Roy is on that list because he and John Christie had some interesting satellite measurements that showed no significant warming in the troposphere, the lowest level of the atmosphere, which is what we're concerned about with global warming. But sadly for Roy and John, their result turned out to have been an artifact of a combination of algebraic and sign errors on their part. When corrected, the data showed mid-tropospheric warming, as predicted by the models that do include anthropogenic climate forcings. Spencer and Christie have admitted their error, but for some reason they occasionally slip it into their debates still, and for that reason alone I am suspicious of Roy Spencer. So I went to Roy's blog today, and I must say he has a very nice website, much better than mine, as some people have pointed out. Maybe someday I too will have a web designer. The first sentence right out of the gate is completely false. One of the basic tenets of the IPCC view on global warming is that cloud feedbacks are positive. That is, clouds react to a warming influence by further amplifying the warming. As one can clearly see from the IPCC's fourth assessment report findings of radiative forcing in watts per square meter, the cloud effect is a cooling, not warming effect, thus a negative feedback, not a positive feedback, and is thus quite the opposite of a basic tenet of the IPCC. What is true is that water vapor is a positive feedback, further amplifying the climate. What's more, clouds' overall cooling effect has a large uncertainty bar on it. Our level of scientific understanding of the radiative forcing of the climate by clouds is rather low. What kind of clouds will we get? And at what time of day? And what time of year? And over what kind of land? Or maybe water? But clouds are liquid or solid water droplets and crystals. The positive feedback is in the water vapor that you don't see as clouds. That too will increase in a warmer world. And water is a very effective greenhouse gas. Water simply can't drive climate like carbon dioxide can because it's rapidly fluxing with a large oceanic reservoir that keeps it from running away. Carbon is not so tied and thus can drive climate change, dragging the water vapor with it, which is one of the fundamental bits of knowledge we have had about the climate system, which is held constant for over 150 years of science. From John Tyndall to Svante Arrhenius to Guy Callendar to the great climate modelers of today, that's the water vapor feedback. If that's what Roy wants to call a tenet of the IPCC, I guess that would be fine. But he doesn't. He talks about clouds and their role in the climate system, but he has clearly misrepresented the stance of the IPCC and the majority of climate scientists. Roy Spencer is not a credible source. But let's hear what Rush got from Roy's blog this day.
The place in Siberia where it always gets coldest has hit minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit twice last month. It had only done that one time in the last 25 years.
I searched Roy's blog and I could not find anything on this temperature record, so I can't say anything specifically on it, but I can say from what Rush said that the place in Siberia where it gets coldest is Sakha. Now, Rush said it hit negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit twice in a month. The lowest recorded temperature in Sakha is negative 96.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The number he pulled out, only once in the last 25 years, that's very telling. In a warming world, we would expect such cold extreme events to become fewer and fewer. The anthropogenic greenhouse gas climate forcing, again in watts per square meter, pulled out from the natural background forcings about 30 years ago. How much do you want to bet that the temperature at this undisclosed location, whose station data I can't analyze, so I'm just going to have to, just reason this out, how much do you want to bet that it used to hit negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit twice in a month a lot more frequently before 25 years ago? Also, Rush is feeding us weather data, as if it has anything to do with climate. Climate is the statistical state of the atmosphere at decadal and longer time scales. A single weather measurement is one datum in a sea of data. It appears that Roy Spencer has cherry-picked the data set again to pull out cold anomalies and to act as if those could possibly say anything about the climate. Roy and Rush clearly fail Climatology 101 if they can't even distinguish between weather and climate. Now take a look at the difference in temperature in 2004 compared to the average temperatures from 1951 through 1980. It is clear that not everywhere warms in a global warming world. Some places get cooler due to altered long-term weather patterns. If one were to only focus on the cool spots, as Roy, Rush, and Michael Crichton and their kind like to do, they can completely misrepresent the true picture. I can't say Rush started this deception, but if he is going to put forth matters on climate and act as though he has knowledge, then he is just as guilty of telling falsehoods.
Arctic sea ice, same amount, same thickness as in 1979.
Only if you compare the maximum sea ice area and thickness of the past year with the minimum sea ice area and thickness of 1979. In other words, you have to compare our winter with 1979's summer as far as sea ice is concerned. Sea ice responds on a little bit longer time scale than some other parameters of the climate, such as temperature, do. The long-term trend in the reduction of northern sea ice area and thickness over the past almost 4 decades is undeniable. Seawater absorbs more solar energy than reflective ice, which amplifies Arctic warming. It also releases the cap on evaporation of Arctic seawater. We're tipping into a whole new climate ballgame here, and Rush just keeps spewing lies.
Snow in Chicago again. There is an Arctic air mass that caused temperatures of minus 50 in Alaska that is going to descend over the Midwest and the East next week. That will make the high temperature in New York perhaps minus 5. And we are in the midst of global... and there's another thing. I forgot to mention this. How many of you saw the movie, the global warming movie, Day After Tomorrow? The Day After Tomorrow had as its... You remember, all of a sudden, out of the blue, temperatures went from 75 degrees to minus 150 degrees in an instant. Everything was just killed in an instant. The theory behind that happening was that scientists have told us that the conveyor belt of the Gulf Stream had ceased. Now, what it is, Europe, London, England, their temperatures year-round are pretty moderate because there is a conveyor belt of ocean current from the Gulf Stream down here in South Florida that goes all the way across the Atlantic in a southwest and northeast track. And what it does, it causes very cold water to sink and be replaced with warm water from the Gulf Stream. And this warm water creates certain atmospheric conditions with winds and so forth that keep Europe, Western Europe, England, pretty moderate in temperature. Now, scientists have told us the conveyor belt stopped about 2 years ago, or maybe even longer. And that premise, that conveyor belt, if you will, that's how you envision the flow, the circulation of water, the currents, as a conveyor belt from South Florida all the way, even further than that, all the way up to England. And it stopped, and that's what caused this massive overnight sudden freeze. Well, guess what? Scientists have discovered that last month the conveyor belt started up. And now they're thinking they have to re-examine 25 years of models in science because the conveyor belt has started again. And the reason they're surprised by this is because, London has had unseasonably cold weather. because the conveyor belt had stopped, but now it's kicked up again. And nobody did anything to jumpstart it. So I think, well, maybe this conveyor belt's cyclical. That, like every other scientist in this field of global warming, it's a hoax. They study it within the confines of their own lifetimes. And they try to draw, from the beginning of time, historical data within the context of an average human life, which is impossible. But they have a political agenda behind global warming, and it is more government, more spending, less freedom, higher taxes, so forth and so on. So global warming is a hoax, yet here comes Rex Tillerson endorsing a carbon tax. The Earth, as I have just explained, is cooling. It has been cooling since 1997. It has not warmed.
Oh, brother.